Washington is significantly raising the stakes at home. United States President Donald Trump announced that American forces destroyed a second vessel linked to Venezuelan narco-terrorists. This story isn't about classic Coast Guard operations and arrests with evidence, but about the use of force through an expedited procedure, and that's a completely different chapter. Why does Trump want to open a war front in the Caribbean right now? How does this relate to his tough style with reservations in Europe? And what does this mean for Caracas? We're breaking all of this down based on the facts. My name is Alexei Pichi, and before we start this episode, I ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, click the bell, and don't forget to give it a like. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pichi News. The link to it is in the description of this video, where we post breaking news as it comes in. The American military destroyed a second ship with narco-terrorists from Venezuela. This was stated today by the President of the United States, Donald Trump, specifying that at the end of August, the first ship was sunk in a similar way. After that, the White House moved to create an interagency working group to, quote, develop new rules of engagement against maritime targets connected to drug cartels. The New York Times reports today that President Trump signed a directive back in August, expanding the scope for United States Navy and Air Force strikes against vessels linked to cartels if they ignore orders to stop. At the same time, specialized media outlets are reporting an increased presence ranging from the Coast Guard to air patrols. Military Times adds a brief but important note. In recent weeks, the United States has significantly increased patrols and interceptions in the Caribbean, citing a heightened risk from drug networks based in Venezuela. And the context of this news is very important because relations between Washington and Caracas have been swinging back and forth in recent years. From attempts at oil for sanctions relief deals to sharp reversals due to the policies of Nicolas Maduro. In the region, old stories persist. Cocaine routes from Colombia and Peru have long run through Venezuela to Central America and the Caribbean. If previously the nature of the United States operation was mainly police-oriented, now it is clearly shifting to a mode of strict defense of maritime communications with the use of military force. And for Trump, it's also about image, showing here's where my fleet is and that's where my rules apply. Well, unlike the softness of Trump's predecessors in the regional agenda, why does the White House need all this right now? Well, the first reason is internal. In the United States, the issue of crime and drugs is political dynamite. Any president who shows results in the form of destroyed drug ships gains points with his base. Like, we're not just talking, we're taking action. Although here Trump really missed the mark today, when he was asked how legal it is to just destroy ships in the Caribbean. Trump stated that 300 million people in the United States died from drugs just last year, which is almost the entire population of the United States of America. Quote from Trump: "The illegal drugs that were on the boat, the drugs that are being sent to our country, and the fact that 300 million people died last year from drugs, that's what's illegal." Well, for the record. In 2024, the entire population of the United States of America was almost 342 million people. Well, according to Trump's logic, if another 300 million people died from drugs, then in 2024, the population of America would have been 642 million people. Well, basically, you get the idea. What's the second reason why the United States needs this externally right now? Amid criticism for indecisiveness in Europe over sanctions against Russia, it's useful for Trump to demonstrate strength where the risks are lower and the law is more flexible. Because under international law, naval operations against ships suspected of smuggling are allowed. But usually that means stopping, inspecting, and arresting. Now, the accelerated trigger didn't stop, it sank. This isn't a direct violation of the law, but it's a gray area, how exactly reasonable suspicion is recorded and how lawful requirements are ignored. This is where the directive mentioned by the New York Times comes up. The United States military was given more freedom to act based on the operational picture. But in any case, there are these gray interpretations of how to bypass international law, which Trump is taking advantage of. And in this way, he demonstrates strength. How does Venezuela respond? With rhetoric about United States aggression, an attack on Venezuela's sovereignty, and lies about sovereignty and narco-terrorism. But Caracas is not in a position for a direct confrontation at sea here. The fleet is old, resources are limited, and the support from allies is more political than practical. Yes, Maduro can bring Russian and Iranian advisors into the picture for show and loudly talk about joint military exercises with the Russians, but a military confrontation with the United States would end very badly for him. That's why Venezuela focuses on information and legal strategies. They are building a case that the United States shoots without trial or investigation and sinks civilian ships, which is exactly what Venezuela is doing. He says, it wasn't a cartel ship or vessel, it was a civilian ship. The White House will stand firm. This is from the ironclad version on armed resistance and cartel ties. And in such disputes, the one who has better video radio intercepts, navigation records, and so on, wins. The United States has always excelled at this. How does this fit into Trump's global picture? Interesting. Sanctions on Russia, but only if Europe gives up Russian gas and oil, and only if they impose tariffs on China. As for China, let the allies raise tariffs and then we'll see what to do. With Venezuela, we strike immediately. We hit those ships right away, we hit everything. On the outside, it looks like a double standard, but politically, it all makes sense. In the Caribbean, the United States is the sole dominant power. The risks and escalation are minimal, and as for equipment, there's simply no reverse dependence on Venezuela. In Europe, things are more complicated. Allies, energy, domestic political interest groups. That's why there's conditional toughness in Europe and unconditional toughness toward Venezuela. But honestly, this approach has a side effect. Allies see that the United States president chooses the arena where it's comfortable and avoids those where he'd have to pay some price. For Warsaw and Kyiv, this signals they should depend on themselves and Europe, not expect a quick fix from Washington. Are there risks for the United States? Yes, there are. There's a risk of misidentification. If you sink the wrong ship, you'll spark an international scandal and undermine narco-terrorism as a legitimate target. Second, there's a risk of an asymmetric response. You have to understand cartels aren't a state and they don't care about the laws of war. They attack coastal infrastructure, bribe port workers, and blow up warehouses easily. Third, there's the intervention of third parties like Cuba, Nicaragua, and Iran. All of them know how to turn local incidents into a major political storm. And yes, Venezuela doesn't mind playing the card of American aggression at the United Nations and in any other regional organizations. And the advantages are obvious. In just a month, the United States has already built the framework. This involves more air patrols, coordination with allied coast guards in Colombia and the Dominican Republic, and updated engagement rules. For the cartels, this is a new reality. The usual so-called poor man's submarines, fast boats, and dark cargo ships now risk not arrest but instant sinking. This breaks the economics of the ruts. Fear becomes more expensive, captains cost more, logistics take longer, and any increase in costs in the grey business quickly shuts down ruts naturally. Conclusion: the story of sunken drug vessels is not just an isolated incident. This is a strategy. Trump shows that he has areas where he is ready to act without lengthy consultations. This isn't about Venezuela itself, it's about demonstrating an approach. I'm ready to use force where it's safe for us. But the image is powerful. Trump, single-handedly, with a strong fist, fights against drug cartels, but only where there is no resistance. Politically, this means points at home. Operationally, it disrupts the cartel's roots. But geopolitically, it raises a question for the allies. Where is your resolve? It's paradoxical but true. As United States drug ship raids in the Caribbean intensify, Europe's silence on strict Russia sanctions grows more apparent. This is called name-dropping, which in Warsaw and Vilnius is understood without translation and tries to distract from one topic with another. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's it for now. Take care. Goodbye.